Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of the Market Current, the weekly seafood pricing focused video series from Undercurrent News. This week, Lorin, Castiglione, and I will go into a subject we're both very geeky about, which is cod and haddock pricing. Lorin, who's head of price reporting for UCN in North America, delivers a weekly price assessment on cod, haddock, pollock, sole, and other ground fish. She's going to kick things off by running through this. I'll then take over to cover the latest prices for H&G cod and haddock, which is sent to China and other countries in Asia for processing, then to the US. I'll also look at some of the auction prices we have available on the site for cod and haddock. So first of all, Lorin, kick us off and take us through what's happening with the latest developments in the US wholesale market for cod and haddock.
All right, thanks, Tom. So we went into this year expecting high prices, and we surely got high prices. So let's dive in to access US wholesale prices. You'll hover over on prices up at the top navigation bar and click into US wholesale. And then you'll navigate to the ground fish tab. And there we go. I'll first start off with single frozen, and then I'll get into twice frozen product forms. So let's start with Icelandic cod. And when you take a look at the history here, you can see that upwards trajectory beginning at the end of 2024. We can look at year-on-year view, and we are over $3 a pound above where we were a year ago. And a severe supply squeeze is largely to blame here. So Iceland plays a strategic role. It's one of the primary single frozen Atlantic cod suppliers for the US, as well as for the UK and the EU, where demand is very active, and that tightens the availability coming into the US. When we look at a wider supply view, Barents Sea saw a 25% TAC reduction this year, potentially looking at another 21% dip next year. We've got a ban on Russian seafood, and we have high tariff risks on Chinese processed product, which all limit the available supply coming into the US. I want to jump over to Alaskan cod. There we go. And we see a similar story. It's not as dramatic as the Atlantic side, but it follows the similar patterns. We don't have tariff risks here, but we have seen Barents Sea reductions of about 9% this year, with reports that biomass has shifted north, which complicates catch and supply timing. Additionally, as the Atlantic cod posted premiums, there were some instances of substitution that also put added pressure on the market here. And of course, the domestic cost stack of we've got fuel, cold storage, labor costs that keep the floor firm.
Why is it, Lorin, that the Pacific cod pricing has kind of lagged behind the Atlantic? Do you hear from your contacts in the market?
So Atlantic cod is, it holds a premium over Pacific, kind of always has. There's more of, excuse me, there's more of a preference for the Atlantic cod. My contacts have told me the ones that where, the substitutions were being placed on the Atlantic or from the Atlantic side to the Pacific side, they kind of saw a reversal of that. So there's definitely the preference for Atlantic cod over Pacific.
Right.
And then
other than maybe in the Pacific Northwest, it's more Pacific, but East Coast
right,
definitely against Atlantic. Yeah.
Yeah, general trends. So now jumping to Icelandic haddock. Let me pull up some pricing here. And while quota reductions aren't an issue here, we actually saw a bit of an increase for the 2025-2026 fishing year. Prices still climbed, as you can see. We've got a lot of auction volatility coming out of Iceland, rising fuel, labor costs, sustained European interest here, as well as demand from those summing out from those premiums on cod for haddock. And historically, haddock rides on the coattails of cod, and this is just another example of that. So jumping to twice frozen product from China. Some of those same pressures exist in this sector, but new pressures come into play as well. So let's get both Atlantic cod and Pacific cod loins on the same chart. There we go. And you can see there's definitely relations here. Tariffs surely played a role here, causing a lot of uncertainties. There were a lot of shifts in tariff rates this year, gray areas on when they were being implemented. So importers pulled back on orders, waiting on clarity, and that reduced and delayed some volumes coming into the US. There have been shifts away from China for processing, which has created some bottlenecks in the supply chain, as well as higher freight, longer lead times, all of which factored into prices climbing on twice frozen cod. And throughout this rise, we really haven't seen a lot of demand destruction just yet. So product continues to move at these premiums.
Why is it you hear from your contacts that demand has not been impacted, and are you surprised by the extent to which the market has held at the price levels as they've been?
Yes, every week I'm asking contacts, have we hit the ceiling yet? And there were some inclinations of that earlier in the year, but we blew past those. And now the sentiments are, at the end of the year when there's more demand from the holiday season and prices continue to rise, there might be some pushback then. But it's been a surprise for everybody that demand is still holding.
And also presumably partly driven by the pricing for products in the market going so high during COVID, staying that high, and there being like a large margin to play with, which is probably being eroded, but still enough there for profitability.
Right, and it's not an isolated incident where we're just looking at one species that's seeing rising prices. It's pretty much across the board. So there really isn't too much of an outlet. So that if you're looking for whitefish, you're going to have to be paying the premiums.
Yeah, very true.
And now twice frozen haddock. So there we go. There are some interesting dynamics at play here that we haven't talked about yet. The first being Section 301 tariff exemption extension, and that was supposed to expire at the end of August. And that's now being pushed until the end of November. If the exemption expires, then haddock will see an additional 25% on top of the existing tariff, which currently sits at 30% out of China. Another big overhang is the MMPA rule that's looming on January 1st, 2026, when NOAA's Marine Mammal Protection Act restrictions are expected to ban finished haddock products, which are made from Russian raw materials, from entering the US. And this will close a critical loophole and supply channel for the US. And no, this did not already happen back in March of 2022 like it did for other species. Russian haddock has still been entering the US this whole time by means of China. So those are just some of the major factors impacting things in the US wholesale markets. Tom was going to bring you a little bit more upstream and review what's happening closer to the source with raw materials.
Yeah.